So the next thing I want to go over is one of the other issues, some of the controversies and some of the compromises that other owners of this car and myself have had to experience. So again, the main big thing that was about this car that caused most of the controversy was the V6 engine. Many people have been angered about this. They say the car was worthless because it only had a V6. It should have had the V8. A real hot rod had a V8 engine. And then on top of that also was the transmission because it was an automatic. Now, to be clarify, it technically is what Chrysler called their auto stick back in the day. You actually could shift this car. It does have the ability to shift it. It's only a 4-speed, but it definitely does make some difference. I honestly haven't used it as much as I should. I don't mind the car as the way it shifts already on its own, but it's one of those things where some people are just like, that's not the same thing, and I would understand. Although if you saw the footwell in this car and the fact that there's not a whole lot of room down there because of the shape of the car, not a whole lot of room for a clutch pedal anyway. So in my opinion, probably not a bad idea that there's not one there for that reason alone. So one of the other things that has caused this car to not get a good reputation is due to the fact that it's been referred to as a factory hot rod. Unfortunately, because of being the term hot rod, a hot rod in its real definition of what a hot rod is that it's a car that used to be something else, that wasn't a fancy sporty car, a more mundane car, and somebody changed it out and made it look sporty and turned it into something else. So a factory hot rod, by definition, doesn't make any sense. And so there's people that have not liked that term or don't like the car because of that, because they say, well, there's no way it really could be a hot rod because it was built that way in the factory. One thing to keep in mind is that it wasn't intended to be technically a hot rod. It was influenced by the design, and there's different reasons behind why they came up with this. I mean, certain things they wanted to emulate, but it wasn't exactly supposed to be a hot rod, because if it was a true hot rod back in the day, it wouldn't even have some of the things that that car had, which at the time were modern conveniences like power windows, power brakes, power locks, CD player, things like, things that didn't exist back then, this car had. And so that was part of the idea, is that you could get that hot rod kind of look and feel, but have some of the conveniences that you otherwise back in the day would never have had. So the other reason why this car has often gotten a lot of bad press, and again, it's not hard for you to find anything out on YouTube or anything online that'll tell you what a failure this car was. And the people that write these articles and reviews and so on most likely don't own the car. They maybe not even driven the car before. They only know the car because of the fact that they say, well, there was only 11,000 plus made. It was only made over 5 mile years. Oh, it must have been a failure. That's why they dropped it. Well, to be clear, when the car was originally designed, they only had so many years planned for it anyway. In fact, the car really was probably only planned for maybe another year after that. The fact is, government regulations require certain things to be on certain cars. They have to be built in certain ways and pass certain tests. And so back in the day when it first came out, they had to go with what they knew at the time, what was allowed at the time. And then as the years went on with it, new regulations came along, and they were basically given a timeline saying you have to get things changed by this particular date. And some of those things just were going to cause major changes to the car. And so it's one of these things where they decided, okay, it's not that the car is a failure. It's not because hardly anybody's buying it. They didn't build a whole lot of them on purpose, so it's not that. The main reason they did it was because the car had to have these changes made to it, and so that was going to happen. They had to stop production at some point anyway, and so that was the reason why. So people that go out there and tell you, well, this car was a failure, they only built it for whatever. Well, again, there was a reason for that. And again, it's not because the car was a bad seller or bad design or anything like that. It had a limited time frame. It was planned for only a limited time frame. So let's leave it at that. Now, other thing too, as an owner of it, it's something I've also noticed too, and those with the Prowlers had to realize this, is that you got all those people out there that own Corvettes and Mustangs and Challengers and other cars, even Challengers, even though it's the same brand, still kind of get on us as well. And because they have their bigger engines, their fancier cars, and they think it's a much better car, the fact is, you take your car to a show, you see Corvette after Corvette after Corvette, you see a whole bunch of Mustangs, you'll see the Challengers, you'll see the Chargers, you'll see all those cars, and that's great. But anybody else that's there, especially family-oriented shows, people see these cars, and they've seen them before. It's like, oh, okay, there's a Corvette. Oh, there's a Mustang. Big deal. They see them all the time. they see a Prowler and they don't know what they're looking at. They ask questions about it, they're interested, they want to know what this thing is, and especially when the kids get to see it. I love it when I get the chances to see kids, just their eyes light up, because it reminds me of when I was a kid, looking at, you know, my favorite, you know, fancy cars, you know, big Lamborghinis and Ferraris and things like that. Kids, you know, cars you could never obtain. This car is obtainable, and it attracts just as much attention for a lot less money. So that brings up another point, is that this particular car is not the kind of car you want to drive if you have any issue with being, if you want to be inconspicuous, this is not the car to be in. The fact of the matter is, wherever you go riding in this car, when you're driving in it, people will look at you. It is just a matter of fact, and it's something that if you don't like that, you shouldn't be driving this car. You shouldn't even be in the car, because people will stare at you. They're not always good stares, but most of the time it's usually pretty good. I get a lot of thumbs up, I get a lot of waves, and it's not that I want to attract attention to myself. It's not the kind of person I am. I don't like attracting my attention to me. I like attracting attention to the car. Whenever I've seen fancy cars, or like cars that just I really love, I love to see it. And so I love it when other people can see this and see something like that and enjoy looking and get a smile on people's faces when they see it. It's not that I get a big ego rush out of the thing. Some people may think that, and I'm sure others that look at the car, look at me driving it and probably thinking, oh, this guy is just full of himself. Well, no, it's not necessarily the case. We just love the car. It's not necessarily we love ourselves and want to show ourselves off. So just making that clear. Not every Prowler owner out there wants to show off themselves. They want to show off the car.